And so right now we're in a great time that the narrative is just sort of opened up, right? And women are emancipating themselves, they're empowering themselves. More importantly, I think what's really nice is that so are the men learning. I think it's great to have strong women, but it's also really important to have soft men and gentle men. It's not really so much about having an opinion, because I think that word has a bit of a negative connotation. For me, the fact that you have an opinion about something means that you care. It means that you observed. It means that you bothered. So I don't really see that as a negative thing. I think you just have to kind of know that, do you have an audience for your opinion?
I have also experienced it happening a lot. You're casted for a job or a role, and if you have any thoughts, opinion, or anything to share, and I've been advised to not say it at all. Otherwise you'll be labeled difficult, and then they don't want to work with difficult women.
I spend a lot of time thinking about this, that even that term, be a man, right? And or don't be a woman about it. It got me kind of thinking that what does masculinity mean and what does femininity mean, right? We're gonna start with a warm up, and this is a yoga studio, so everyone, we're gonna do a Surya Namaskar. Okay, everyone knows what a Surya Namaskar is, so we all kind of take our places in front of the mirror. And she said, oh, there's just one caveat: you have to do it like a stripper.
Oh wow!
Well,
interesting.
What does that mean, right? What's a stripper Surya
And
Namaskar?
how is it done?
I kind of started to redefine it for myself as, femininity is about receptivity and masculinity is about proactivity. And I think I can find those two spaces within myself. I think that a lover relationship is extremely unique. It's unlike any other relationship in the world. I feel like it brings out, in most people, it brings out their most vulnerable sides. In a lot of people that can look really toxic, in a lot of people that can be actually absolutely wonderful and creative and constructive. I feel like, all of us were always wearing some kind of a mask, right? You're wearing a mask, a certain mask when you're out with your family, a certain mask when you're out at work, a certain mask when you're out with your friends. I feel that for me, at least, in that kind of a relationship with a lover, I feel like those masks kind of come off.
So does vulnerability requires maturity on the other end also to understand? Would you be vulnerable only with a person who you think would be able to receive it well, or you would be okay to be as yourself? Because like you said, that others, why do we wear a thick skin, or we pretend to have a thick skin? Because we don't want to be used. We don't want to be sort of taken lightly or for granted, right?
Yeah.
So, and that also comes from a place that you feel that other person doesn't have the maturity to handle it.
Right.
If I just be kind, they're not used to
and
be.
we're the most mature and we're awesome. Everyone else is wrong.
Hi, welcome to the Journey Within podcast with me, Shobha Rana. This is a podcast where we steer conversations about the deep within internal journeys of a person, where we talk about the things that really matter, the processing of the emotions that happens, and that reflects on the kind of experiences that we have in our life. Today, I have a very special guest, and I say special because I'm really having a fangirl moment here. So my guest today is an excellent actor, screenwriter, and also a spoken word artist. Please welcome Eisha Chopra to the show today. Hey Eisha, how are you?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming over here, and let's talk about your journey.
Okay, which journey do you want? Because if you're going to ask me about my acting journey, I've discussed that in every interview possible, and I'm so bored because my answers don't change. So we can talk about the acting journey is a little bit of a journey without, but what would you like to know about the journey within?
We would definitely like to, deep dive into the journey within, because I have heard so many of your stories. They are online. I've witnessed you perform also once, just now when we met at this beautiful storytelling event. So I for sure know that you are a person who has a lot of self-expression and also a lot of opinions about things, which only comes from a lot of self-work that has happened.
I'm so glad that's trending these days, because being opinionated was not something that was appreciated
at all.
While we were growing up, at least. So I'm glad I'm trendy these days. But
rightly so, and you very well said it, that it wasn't trendy and it was rather discouraged.
Exactly.
So tell me of an experience that you could recollect where you were discouraged for having opinions or having a voice as a female.
So I would say that it's not just about women in my industry, it's about women in the world, you know. For me in particular, I think my work is what really put me in touch with who I am as a woman and what I want to do for other women. But I realized that, you know, women have it bad everywhere, you know, and so right now we're in a great time that the narrative is just sort of opened up, right? And women are emancipating themselves, they're empowering themselves. More importantly, I think what's really nice is that so are the men learning. You know, I think it's great to have strong women, but it's also really important to have soft men and gentle men. And I think that that sort of that ego balance, you know, it's sort of balancing itself out really nicely right now. I mean, of course, it's happening in smaller spaces, and you know, we have a long way to go. But I remember, like, when I was growing up, like you said, I've always had opinions, you know. I was actually a little bit of an introvert while I was growing up.
Oh, is
but,
it?
Yeah, I know. Nobody believes me.
It's hard to believe so.
Yeah, nobody believes me, but it was the truth. I was really quiet. I was introverted. All I ever wanted was to be left alone. But I remember that I always had this sort of, I always had a problem with authority. You know, I always had a problem being told what to do and not being able to do what I wanted to do, because even today that still doesn't make sense to me. Why should any human being have to do something they don't want to do or say something they don't want to say? So it's not really so much about having an opinion, because I think like that word has a bit of a negative connotation. For me, the fact that you have an opinion about something means that you care. It means that you observed. It means that you bothered. So I don't really see that as a negative thing. I think you just have to kind of know that, well, do you have an audience for your opinion? You know, read the room, find out if they actually want to hear what you have to say. And when you were tell us some of your experiences, the first memory that sort of came up for me was there was this sort of like friend of my parents, like a family friend that I saw a lot growing up. And she used to always say about me, you know, she has a mind of her own. And that was something that, you know, it was always said in a kind of like a snarky way. But just hear those words. Do you not want me to have a mind of my own? Should I, you know, I mean, whose mind am I supposed to be having exactly? But I think that was always something that was not appreciated in a woman. You know, it was always considered that you always considered to be a diva or difficult, all of those things. I mean, I've been on shoots. I've seen men lose their shit. You know, I've seen them go crazy, you know, shout, scream, this, that, and the other. You see a woman doing that, she's not coming back on set. You see a guy doing that, they say, oh, sir ko gussa aa gaya aaj, you know. Everyone kind of be tentative around this guy because he's allowed his anger and he's allowed to be an about it. And, you know, the cycle of abuse continues. But I've never seen a woman be allowed to express the same things that a man does and get away with it. You know,
Rightly
not that I
so.
think anyone should be being abusive or shouting and screaming. It's just interesting that, you know, in spaces where we just demand our rights, it's, you know, I mean, have you ever noticed that, you know, when you've been in a work situation, you go and if there's something wrong and you are in your right to say that this is wrong or this is not what I signed up for or this is not working out for me, you're immediately labeled as difficult and no one wants to work with you again.
In this business, particularly, I think that I have also experienced it happening a lot. You're casted for a job or a role, and if you have any thoughts, opinion, or anything to share, and I've been advised to not say it at all. You know, otherwise you'll be labeled difficult, and then they don't want to work with difficult women. So I think
they love the difficult men.
They do.
You know, that means that they care.
That they care, right?
But,
difficult men even get more jobs than the men who are not as strong in their personalities, because then they are regarded for having a voice and, you know, all of,
I hate that word.
Having a mind of their own, so to speak, to put it in that many words. But so I think rightly so. But I also am seeing a positive shift in the space now. In the recent 5 years, the needle is sort of moving. I mean, we have a long way to cover, but the conversations at least are starting, and people are caring to also care about women and not label them as only difficult, also to respect them for having the ability to voice out their opinions and having the courage also, which I feel, I mean, if you're just speaking your mind, you're not coming from a place of showcasing courage, or it shouldn't be a showcase of all of that.
It should be normal. Like, it should be normal.
Just
Why
normal.
are you interested in a conversation with me if you're not interested in my mind, frankly?
Correct.
You know?
Right? So now, although I don't like people terming it as you being a courageous woman just for being able to speak what you really feel,
Yeah.
or for just being able to say no to certain things that don't agree with you. Because people, this whole idea of women saying no for something at a job,
Yeah,
something
You're
trivial
right.
at a
It's
job.
so messed up that,
So messed
just
up.
saying what you think is considered.
Oh, you're so bold. You said
Yeah.
that. Did you have the guts to turn down a job?
Right.
I mean, because there's money attached to
Shouldn't
it.
be like that.
Just all these terms attached to it, scary, confusion, or courage, boldness, all of this, I feel it's very unnecessary. It should be a very natural phenomenon, and it should be
Right.
understood as that.
It should be human. It should
should
not
be human.
be male, female, any gender, sex, anything. But, I actually think I spend a lot of time thinking about this, that, even that term, be a man, right? And, or don't be a woman about it. It got me kind of thinking that what does masculinity mean and what does femininity mean, right? Even when you think of something like a yin yang, right? It's not really, I don't think it's, I mean, I hope that this is true, but I don't think it's really talking about, say, the male-female partnership. I think it actually refers to the masculinity and femininity within you, regardless of your sex and regardless of your gender. I think we all need to kind of find that masculine and feminine balance within ourselves. I'll give you an example of this story that happened, it was really interesting. My best friend in Bombay, ran a yoga studio, and she kind of called me one day saying that we're doing this pole dancing class, and, we need more people in the class, so you have to come. And we went there, and, of course, she and I were the worst at the pole dancing. So, but I remember, this class, like, it really just, something that the teacher said really resonated with me, because, so she started the class by saying, okay, everyone, now we're going to start with a warm-up, and this is a yoga studio, so everyone, we're going to do a Surya Namaskar. Okay, everyone knows what a Surya Namaskar is, so we all kind of, take our places in front of the mirror, and she said, there's just one caveat, you have to do it like a stripper.
Oh, wow.
Well, like,
interesting.
Huh? What does that mean, right? What's a stripper Surya
And
Namaskar?
how is it done?
Right? She's like, just imagine that you're a stripper and now do the Surya Namaskar, right? So we're like, like we're kind of moving and things like that. And of course, I was feeling really silly, and I was sort of like giggling kind of defensively in the situation, etc., etc. And, she kind of stopped me, and my friend who was doing the same thing, and she said, this whole workshop and pole dancing also, she's like, it's actually about empowerment. It's about being sexy, right? And it's actually about like that very extreme femininity and kind of, coming in touch with that. And she said, look at the two of you. You can't stop making fun of it, right? She's like, you are two people. You're these, me being an actor in this industry, and her being, she's a yoga teacher, which is not necessarily a male-female job, but she's a business owner. And she was Indian American. And she said, you're here, you've both moved from your hometowns to this city. It's, it's an obviously tough city to kind of make it in. You're working in male-dominated industries. You're standing up for yourself, you're earning, you're doing that whole independent female dialogue. She's like, you've turned into boys. You've forgotten how to be girls. And, we thought about it, we're like, yeah, she's right. We are so in touch with our masculine side because that's what we needed to do, that we forgot. We forgot about our gentleness, we forgot about our softness, we forgot about all those other things that make you female, right? And I thought about that. I'm like, okay, so clearly I have that side in me, and I've been sort of honing in on my masculine side a little bit more, in the past few years for these reasons, because that is how I sort of sought to survive. It might have been in the way I dressed, or it might have been in the way I, project myself. But it's not about playing a man. It's just about kind of getting in touch with your masculinity, and as women, for example, we already are in touch with our femininity. We sort of like, it's sort of force-fed into us. So it's interesting to kind of go into your masculinity. And then as men, or whatever you identify with, whatever sex or gender you identify with, it's interesting to kind of go into that other aspect, because every human, regardless of sex and gender, has a masculine side, has a feminine side. There's no other side, and it's really interesting to kind of meet that balance. And I think that, when we talk about male-female roles and, gender normative lives and things like that, it's, the obvious answers are the hunter, the whatever, the provider, this, that, and the other, the nurturer, the protector, and all of these sort of like, this dialogue is so old now, and it's so boring. But I kind of started to redefine it for myself as, femininity is about receptivity, and masculinity is about proactivity. And I think I can find those two spaces within myself.
That's so beautifully
And I think
put.
anyone can. So
That's so beautifully put. And to break out of this conditioning of
Right.
identifying a certain pattern as masculine and a certain
Yeah.
behavior and certain tendencies as feminine,
Yeah.
and just trying to typecast your own self into those two to fit and survive,
Yeah.
that's a quest that we have all been unknowingly, knowingly, whatever. But so glad that you said that striking the right balance between the two is
Yeah.
where our journeys within are happening. And
Exactly, that's been a really, really important journey for me. Like what's happening right now, you and I, we're reciprocating, right? So one person is being active at one point, one person is receiving at one point, right? That is like true collaboration, and that doesn't come from just you and me. That's coming from the fact that you and I are both honed in on these energies within us. That's why we're able to do this. That's why we're able to have a conversation even though we've just met. Right?
Very, very true, Eisha. So a person like you who has been carrying her opinions, a very strong formation of the world that she lives in and the world she desires to live in, when a person like this gets into friendships and relationships,
Right.
how does they turn out? How do they turn out for you?
Are you saying I'm very difficult?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not
Did I make
saying
a
that.
mistake by coming here and being that woman?
No, I'm certainly not
and
saying
too brute,
that.
so.
No, but again, coming from the conditioning, the way like
How do my relationships happen?
how do your relationships happen, and what kind of a time do you have in those relationships with these people?
So are you talking
get
about like
labeled?
relationships with lovers or relationships with
Let's
friends?
say with lovers, do you get judged and labeled even there, or are you able to find people who are able to not judge you for your opinions or not label you as a difficult person?
So this is kind of interesting, right? Because I think that a lover relationship is extremely unique. It's unlike any other relationship in the world. I feel like it brings out, in most people, it brings out their most vulnerable sides. In a lot of people, that can look really toxic. In a lot of people, that can be actually absolutely wonderful and creative and constructive. I feel like, all of us were always wearing some kind of a mask, right? You're wearing a mask, a certain mask when you're out with your family, a certain mask when you're out at work, a certain mask when you're out with your friends. I feel that, for me at least, in that kind of a relationship with a lover, I feel like those masks kind of come off. I enjoy that relationship because.
Do you
for me-
enjoy being vulnerable with another person, or do you
Yeah,
try to
I
mask
do.
it as well and
No.
say that I have this projection of a very strong, independent woman, so let
no,
me just be
so
that?
I really enjoy vulnerability. I really, really enjoy it because pretty much at all other times in life, you're doing the other thing, So for me, I've always been a sort of an emotional and sensitive person, and I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that that's a gift. And I like to hone in on this gift. And vulnerability is an interesting concept, right? Because like even in the work I do, right, as an actor, it's really, people always talk about like, oh, you need that hide and, you need that thick skin and you need to survive and all of these things, all those words. I think that it's such a paradox because the trade requires you to have a really, really thick skin, and have all those sort of layers and that distance. But the craft, it requires you to be absolutely vulnerable and be yourself. So it's been kind of, so this concept of vulnerability has been very active in my mind for a really long time because, for me to survive, I need to deny that vulnerability. But for me to actually do my job well, I need to hone in on it. The trade and the craft require very different sort of aspects of this
Again,
thing.
creating that balance.
I don't know if it's a balance, because I don't think you can strike a balance in this. I think this is completely counterproductive. I find it really sad that, actors or media people or anyone out in the world, why restricted to just, this profession? Why do we need a thick skin? Why couldn't we just all be like nicer and kinder to each other so that people don't need thick skins? What if we actually just sort of communicated with love and respect and consent in all kinds of ways? Then you wouldn't need a thick skin, right? Like if I wasn't going to be a dick to you, then you don't need to have a thick skin because I'm nice, right? And then you can receive. So vulnerability is only, I think, questionable depending on who you're opposite. What are they doing to you, If that person has a positive impact on you, then it's good to be vulnerable because you're receiving all of that. Comes back to your femininity.
So does vulnerability requires maturity on the other end also to understand? Would you be vulnerable only with a person who you think would be able to receive it well, or you would be okay to be as yourself? Because like you said, that others, why do we wear a thick skin or we pretend to have a thick skin? Because we don't want to be used. We don't want to be sort of taken lightly or for granted, right?
Yeah.
So, and that also comes from a place that you feel that other person doesn't have the maturity to handle it.
Right.
If I just be kind, they're
we're
not used
great
to
and
be.
we're the most mature and we're awesome. Everyone else is wrong.
Right. So that also requires some kind of a maturity on the other end also for you to be able to navigate with that vulnerability. Right. You would take your chances here and there, but if it's not well received, you would have that, you will again go in the shell and try to, be on
then
the
your
thick skin.
self-preservation instincts will kick in. I think, what you've kind of touched upon is, again, is the concept of boundaries, right? And this is a term that's become very popular in the last couple of years because this is what people are dealing with, right? I want to connect with you, but you're making it hard for me to connect with you. And vice versa for some reason, because we're both honed in on our own narratives, right? We are all the heroes of our own stories and the victims of each other's, right? So I think that boundaries are a very interesting concept. And, as Indians, we don't really have it, right? And as Indians, we are oversharers. We're emotional, right? We are all about that love and that sharing. I mean, we know our third and fourth cousins. That doesn't happen anywhere else in the world, right? And we want to do right by them also.
Correct.
Right? So I think that, as a culture, we're so much about all of that, right? But I think that, as just sort of people who actually want to exist in the world in a sort of conscious way, boundaries are really important because they're not saying that I'm drawing a line between you and me. It's not saying that I don't care about this relationship or I want to push this relationship away. It's actually saying I do care about this relationship enough to have the courage to draw a line to make it work. If you are my friend or you are my lover or you are my whatever, you are my family, whatever it might be, if there's something that doesn't work for me between us and I draw that line, it means I'm making an effort to actually make things work between us. It's not about ego, or it shouldn't be at least. It shouldn't be about me one-upping, or it shouldn't be about me, like I said, I'm always right or I'm always the mature person. You are emotionally immature and et cetera, et cetera. It's just about saying, this isn't working for me, so let's find a way to make this work. Or this isn't working for you, we can problem solve. And maybe we problem solve by drawing that line and we just respect it. It's like good neighbors.
Right. Like you said that, as Indians, the kind of community, the culture that we grow up with, it does not have scope for respecting boundaries, at least as of yet. Again,
it's also the kind of wonderful thing about it. It's one of the things I love being Indian is that we just show up for everyone.
Everyone.
You're everywhere. Out somewhere in a different part of the world and there's an Indian who's looking confused and need directions. I've given hours of my time to those people sometimes just because, right? Because we got to do that for each other.
Right. So when you draw these boundaries, like I said, that all of these things, I think they're also about how the reception is happening on the other end. So have you lost a friend or a lover or a relationship because you were drawing these boundaries and you were very clear that these should be valued or respected? I have, for sure.
Yeah, I think, losing friends is unfortunately that occupational hazard of just adulting. It's a friend breakup can be so painful, sometimes even more than a lover breakup because friends are forever, right? I mean, at some level, you kind of expect your lovers to go because if it's not going to work out, then there's always the option of...
And I think when you break up with a friend, you judge yourself way more than when you break up with a lover. You do.
Right.
No?
I don't know. I mean, I think that there is somehow a deeper betrayal in a friend breakup. I think we almost expect to be wronged by our lovers, because we do give ourselves that option. So, it may not work out, right? But when you become really close to someone, become friends with them, you don't really give yourself that option that this may not work out one day. You just assume that you're going to be friends forever. But, friendships are very complicated. And I think that you are in relationship with your friends as well. You have to treat it like that. And of course, if we give that much kind of time and investment to our friends as we give our lovers and our families, we won't have time to do anything else. We won't have time to work. We won't have time to clean and cook and all of those things. So you can't. But I would say in this past decade, or at least the last 5 or 6 years there, I have lost a lot of friends, and that has been interesting and heartbreaking and confusing, but also very, very liberating to a large extent. Because I think that friends need to exist in, one of two spaces, right? A friend should either stimulate you, that you should be like, okay, great, this person is, helping me come up with ideas, they're helping me discover myself better. We're not talking about people and things, we're talking about concepts and life. So there should be either that friend that stimulates you, or you need the friend that soothes you, where it's like, oh, we've been friends forever. It's, being around you just makes me laugh and cry and all of those things, and I feel safe, right? So you've got the soothing and the stimulating. And when these two things actually come together, there's this wonderful Venn diagram, and those people you should definitely keep in your life. But the people that aren't really sort of working
Fitting
out in
into any of
either
those.
sphere, I mean, then why are you here?
Then why
are
here?
you doing this? I do have friends who are, say, very intelligent people, and I know that they have so much to offer, but for me, they are that old friend that I just want to like lie in bed and like watch a movie with. And I have other people in my life who, are great and they're comfortable and they're wonderful and warm people, but for me, they're tickling my brain in some way. So I think you need one or the other, and you're really lucky if you get both. I know who those people are in my life, and I also know the people in my life that have, officially been friends for so long, but they're not really anywhere.
Right.
So,
a lot of friendships that we carry from childhood, and we very proudly say 30 years, 20 years, 25 years. But how many of us do really reflect on those friendships and
Yeah, we
seek
love
that what
putting
are
that
they,
number.
right?
Yeah.
And really seek that what is it adding to my life today, or what am I adding and contributing to their life today? And I've seen these numbers go higher and higher, and it keeps getting bigger with every year, and you have like 30 years long friendship. But actually, if you put a
More
meaning
weight
to
and
it,
burden and baggage to carry for so long.
and no gravitas to the friendship at all, right?
Right.
So in my head also, I've started questioning these friendships about 5, 6, 7 years ago, and started deep diving into, okay, I'm calling her my friend for 15 years and I'm labeling her as my best friend and all of that. But what is this best friendship? It might have started out in that way, but today, I'm not saying that you have to be active into each other's life every day and all of that. It's not transactional, but you know what stimulates you and what soothes you.
Yes.
And you have to have that maturity to ask yourself that question, because in the end, you become the company that you keep around yourself, whether you know it or not. So if you keep a company that is, I don't want to say the word shallow, but in a way it is, then you also become a person who doesn't have a sense to reflect, a sense to introspect, a sense to contemplate, a sense to discover your own self, talk about things like vulnerability, about boundaries, about saying no, and all of these things. So I think that inquiry within yourself is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think that friendships and all relationships, they should not be transactional, but it is important that they're reciprocal. And I think that if we approached every relationship with this sort of agenda that like, is it making me better and what am I discovering about myself, etc., then, I mean, that can get, for me, I think I'm already doing that, in myself. So I think that relationships can also be constructive. Like we can also build a world together. We can also sort of, deep dive into a universe together. We can also discover, like everything in life maybe doesn't have to be about self-discovery. Like it's a great pursuit, but we can also create things, we can also have fun. We can also play. I think,
of course, not going after it with an active agenda of, it's stimulating or soothing me in some way, but also to be aware of what you're actually
but
into.
a contribution, it's got to contribute to your life in some way, because I don't know, I just don't think
takes
I have
your
the
energy.
time for the drains.
Correct.
I just don't have time for anything that drains me anymore, because no matter how much older I get, the day still has 24 hours, and that has not changed. So
correct. Yeah, so to have that sense of awareness of what you're building, who you're building it with, why you're building, where is it going?
Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough. It's really tough to just, because I think it's really tough to reach a space where you realize that somebody you love has absolutely nothing to offer you. I mean, God, it really
It's
hurts.
a very traumatic experience.
It really hurts, because you love them.
You love them. You started out in a great fashion. That could happen in a friendship, could happen in a relationship as well.
But love and care are very different concepts, Love
oh my
matters
God, I'm
no
so
matter
glad
what.
you said that. I'm so glad. In the other episode, I was talking to my other guest about the same thing, and I said that we as a generation have confused love and care so much that when a marriage is, let's say, 2 years, 3 years, now that number has come to that low, but earlier they would say 10 years, 20 years, they would say that you care about them, and that is love. And I say that, and I believe that you use it so casually. You say it so casually, as if they both mean the same thing, but they don't. Love is love and care is care. And love, if it is there, it can be nurtured, and you can, carry it forward along with the care. But if one has gone out the window and you're just sustaining a relationship basis care, I think it's not a very deep and very stimulating relationship for you.
So actually, for me, the care is more important. I think care is how you express your love. You know, there are lots of people I love, but I probably don't care about them enough. Or I probably care about myself more than I care about them. But the love is there. And maybe that doesn't mean anything, because does love mean something without the care? What's the point? Right? It's just that, and then that's for me. That's for me to get my own kicks out of. That's for me to get my own sort of stimulation out of. Like, oh, I love you. Like, that's great. I love spending time with you, etc., etc. You do something for me. But unless I have, I think what I got to give back to you is the care in some way, whether that comes in the form of listening, whether that comes in the form of my attention, whether that comes in the form of my presence, whether that comes in the form of, occasional, possibly unsolicited advice, whether that comes in the form of intervention, whatever it is. But my love is only mine. The way I make it yours is through care. So I think you're right that, what you're talking about is that maybe you only care about someone and you don't have that love. For me, it's the opposite. It's the other way around. That the love is there, but it doesn't mean anything to the other person without that care.
No, right. I feel that love, if you have it for someone or for your own self, it will have an inherent component of care, but like, why would it exist otherwise?
I love lots of people that have been in my life in the past, I went to college in the States, for example, and I lived there for 7 years in New York. And there were so many people, that I absolutely loved and adored. And they were really big, important parts of my life then. And, it was New York and we all kind of went back home. And, lives have just moved forward and the love exists. But I don't think I send them a message more than once in 6 months. And to me, I'm doing them a solid by sending them a message once in 6 months. But it's a message once in 6 months. I don't have more than that to give.
Correct.
I just don't have more than that to give.
That's
and tomorrow if they say that they don't think I'm a friend for that, then they would be right.
Right, and that's how a relationship transforms also over the years, because all of us have so much to do in our lives individually also.
Yeah.
And a change of place could be also a big factor for you to sort of look into a relationship in a different way now. I would have so many friends who would be living in the same lane as I do, and today it's not happening anymore. So of course the conversations are limited. Of course that once in a 6 month message
convenience is a very big part of a friendship or any relationship.
That's what I realized. A lot of us start calling out or start making friends with the people who are very convenient to be friends with, who are in your close proximity in one way or the other.
But I think it's a better idea. Honestly, I think it's a better idea. Like, I live in Khar in Bandra.
For Bombay, for sure it is.
It's too difficult for me to get to Andheri right now. And I used to live in Andheri, and then I was like, if I met someone from Bandra that I liked, I was like, you're nice. But, nahi hone wala hai.
I love you, but I don't care enough for you to make that trip.
I don't. I care more about I can't handle the honks, I can't handle that ride. So I think, I've noticed that, people, especially in Bombay, actually, people do kind of ask, where you, in Delhi, that where you live question has another meaning. Yeah. It's about the fact that we're inherently classist. But in Bombay, it's a very practical question, because you got to ask that right off the bat. You got to know if you have the time for this. And then if you do, you can hang out longer, and kind of ask them out a second time or something. But it's not happening otherwise.
Right. Yeah. Eisha, how many years have you been in Bombay now for?
So I moved to Bombay about 8 years ago. I think the 2 years of COVID, I don't count.
You live by yourself there?
I do live by myself.
So how is living alone in Bombay when you don't step out much? And you don't
I do step out, I just don't go very far.
You don't go very far also, which means you come back also, I'm hoping.
I'm a very social creature.
What I'm trying to get to is that you have a lot of time for yourself when you live by yourself. Because I haven't lived by myself for very long. Right after my divorce, I got an opportunity, so I did for some part. And I figured that there is so much that you learn about yourself when you live alone. So you've been doing that for 8 years. So how has that journey been?
Yeah,
and you're single also.
I'm single, I'm perennially single. So I remember when, I mean, I've lived away from my family, et cetera, when I was living in America, but I always had flatmates. And when I first moved into my own apartment in Bombay, I remember being scared, because I don't know what I was scared about, because I had money, I had security, I knew that I could handle my life and, take care of those things. But I was scared of loneliness, right? Because I was like, what am I going to do when I wake up? What am I going to do? Because what we think of, the first thing you do, if you ask someone who lives with someone, they wake up, they brush their teeth, and then they go have coffee, and then they go say hi to like the person
Good
that
morning,
they live,
yeah. And the conversation breaks, yeah.
Yeah, and I just couldn't imagine what that would look like, and I did it, and I remember, I really think that anybody who has the opportunity to should live by themselves for some time, because yes, you get to know yourself, but why is that important, right? For me, living by myself taught me the difference between loneliness and solitude. And that was a really important thing for me. Loneliness and solitude can both look like the same thing. It could look like you just sitting on your couch with a plate of dinner on your lap watching TV. But loneliness makes you feel alone. And solitude means you have the pleasure of your own company. And that is one of the most beautiful transitions I've ever had in my life. And then I began to take it seriously. So I was living alone. I started doing, stuff alone, watching stuff alone, eating alone, etc., etc. And then I remember the first time that I ventured out to go watch a movie alone. And it was really weird, and I watched this comedy and the hall was kind of empty. And I remember, whenever something funny would happen on screen, it'd be like, there's no one here.
There's no one.
It was so weird, right? And it was so cute. I remember finding myself so endearing in that moment, And it was such an important relationship, I never interacted with myself before that. And then I started doing, I said, yeah, I like this. This is fun, and then I started eating out alone. And then I said, okay, the next thing that I was like, I'm going to eat out alone and I'm not going to look at my phone. And that dialogue with myself just kind of got deeper and deeper till there was just nothing more to say. It was just like, it's like you're just sitting with a friend and you're like, we don't even need to say anything. That started happening.
This fear of being lonely makes you do so many things and take so many decisions and stay into such wrong spaces for so long just because. And once you really look at it, what is it? What are you really scared of?
Right.
If you're scared of just being by yourself and with your own company and you're not comfortable with that idea, I mean, then there's another journey that you have to make to be comfortable with that idea.
Or you just got to start being a better person.
Correct.
Or you just got to start being more fun.
More fun. And that needs work, and that will take some amount of self-work and other discoveries that you have to make about yourself and be a person that you now like and enjoy to be with.
Yeah, I mean, and I wonder, does it even have to be so serious? I mean, what if it wasn't so serious? What if it was just fun? What if we just sort of approach things that way? Like, I just want to do this because it's fun. Why is that not a good enough reason?
Big enough reason.
Why do we need all these layers, to justify things? I was just traveling. I spent 45 days in London. And it really pissed a lot of people off.
Why so?
Well, okay, let me just put this disclaimer out there that the reason that London is absolutely unaffordable. And the reason I could live there on a vacation budget for 45 days is because I wasn't paying rent. I was staying at my aunt's house and she has a spare room in a very central part of town, right? So let me just put that out there, right, before anyone judges me. But it really pissed a lot of people off because that's just not something people would do. And I didn't plan to go there for so long. I went there for a couple of weeks and then I had a shoot that got pushed and I just realized I could. And, why not, right? The universe is giving me this wonderful gift to stay in this lovely city, and I can just enjoy myself, and I'm going to do that, and I did. And it really pissed a lot of people off because people felt that I needed to justify that time.
By doing
Kaam
what?
nahi karna. You don't have any work to do. I said, no, actually, I worked like a dog the past 4 months before that. I never took a Sunday off. I made sure I earned that much money, and I gave that much time that I can now spend it. And that's what I want to do. That's what I want to do with the 4 or 5 months of work that I put in is I want to spend it on this month in London. And people were just not comfortable with that. Then the next thing would be like, you can spend this money because you got a security of, your family and this and that. And there was just every attempt by the people around me to just negate the fact that I just wanted to do something because it was fun. I had to explain it. I had to defend it. I had to justify it. I couldn't just do it because I wanted to do it. And the truth is, I just did it because I wanted to do it. You know, I mean, like, why aren't you looking for work then? You know, I mean, a whole month, that's people go for 5 days. Yeah, so, you know.
But if you have the opportunity in your life to do so, why not?
You know what? I didn't always take those opportunities. I did not always
For
take
the fear of being judged.
for my
I
own,
agree with
you know, we are just sort of wired for achievement. We're always wired that our time must matter, that every relationship and every connection must be meaningful and must last. And, you know, we put so much pressure. We put so much pressure on our time, on our days, on our relationships. What if we just approach them with like, I just want to do this because I can, because I want to. And like, what if it ended there? You know,
right? There's a yardstick that and it's a standard yardstick for everyone that we want to measure their success, achievement, and things with.
Holidays can only be for 5 days or maybe 2 weeks at most. You know, relationships only matter when they are with the one. You know, a one-night stand can't be a wonderful experience because, you know, you're not going to like do anything about it the next day. Why? I guess there's a time to take things seriously and then there's a time to not take things seriously, and you got to decide what that is for you.
I think that whole boundary between when to do what and when not to do what, because I think all of us sort of find ourselves in spaces where we are supposed to do, let's say A, and another situation we are supposed to do what is absolutely not A, right? So you have to juggle between these two extremes all the times. But
the extreme of A and not A.
And A and not A,
you
right?
could have just said Z.
A and Z, let's say. Yeah, why didn't I say that?
I don't know. Let's talk about that. Why didn't you say Z?
Yeah. So
you know what? I'm curious. I'm interested in this conversation. Why did you say A and not A?
I'm very wired to being a mathematician in my head. So you remember that not sign before? Yeah. So that not A is like, I've done too much of permutations, combinations, and all of that.
There's something interesting because in that, I mean, I'm just having fun. I'm just playing, right? You're basically saying this and everything else.
Right.
Which is a really nice way to see the world.
Right.
Right? It doesn't have to be this or that.
Correct.
It doesn't have to be black or white. It could just be this and everything else. And that's a really kind of nice attitude.
And why to define that I will be this only? You can be everything else depending on the situation. And
you can choose anything you want at any time.
And that ability to choose that, and to choose that not just for the fancy of it, but to choose that in a way that it works for you, mentally, emotionally, physically, in every possible way, is, I think, self-awareness.
But do you think that we can actually do that every day? Like every single day, go out and make such conscious choices?
Depends on how important it is.
I think I'd get so tired if I did that all the time.
No, but not everything you need to make such choices for. Not everything is so important and so serious.
Is this serving me emotionally, physically, mentally, financially?
Certain important things, yes. That drain you of your energy, that drain you of your capacity,
maybe the decisions that are the
capability.
longer committed decisions.
Those take something out of you. So for there, I think we have to sort of take a step back and make those decisions little bit more.
I am fed by my spontaneous decisions though, you know. Like to a large extent, I find that as a person, I really thrive on safety. You know, I really, really thrive on emotional safety. I think it's really important. But I got to get my thrills, you know. I definitely...
That's what I'm saying. So let's not put ourselves into one box that I am a certain way, that Eisha is a certain way. Eisha is every possible way, because you're here to experience every possible human experience, and not just by the virtue of you being here, but also just as a person who is just living into a world, into a universe of possibilities where, you know, I don't like to drink, but I could also enjoy a drink. I mean, it's like that. You could be two extremes on two different days. I don't by choice, but I'm just saying that it could be either ways for you. And who's to say that today I'm sleeping this way and I'll be this person set in stone forever? You could be whoever you choose to be, and to be able to have that choice where, see, once you keep making a choice, there's a point when it's not working for you and when it's working for you in a certain way and you want it to work for you in a certain way. So how to know that, you know, this is, now it has stopped working for you. Let's say when we used to mug up all these books and questions and answers, that worked for us. That gave us some grades, etc., etc. But if you don't have the awareness that you were doing it for a purpose and that becomes your way in life, then sooner than later you'll start that very virtue of you, that very trait that you hold by, this thing that, you know, this is my achievement, this is my capacity, capability, this is who I am. You start identifying with it so much, but it's not working for you anymore. To have that awareness, I think that is very, very important. And there comes the concept of self-awareness, knowing yourself better. So we've gone through
Yeah.
the lockdown for the 2 whole years.
Right.
What is the kind of awareness or reflection that has come into your life that has changed it? Or what is it that you've discovered about yourself that you haven't possibly before?
So, it's funny, I haven't talked about the lockdown in a really long time, right? And just putting this out there, I know that this might sound like an insensitive thing to say, but the lockdown was really good for me. A lot of other things happened that weren't great, but what actually happened, I really sort of value. So a friend of mine and I were discussing that, in a way, it kind of taught us to be how we always should have been, right? Give some love back to our home, spend more time with the people we love, spend more time in nature, make more conscious decisions, have more meaningful relationships, all
Take
of those
a
things.
break.
Take a break, take a break every day, take a break between minutes if you have to. All of those things, right? So in a way, the emotional experience of the pandemic taught us how to live probably in the way we should have always been living. Of course, keeping aside the people who really, really lost things, or people, and also keeping aside,
No, but you're speaking of the
actual
non-mechanical
ramification.
aspect of life.
Yes, yeah. And for me, for example, what I discovered, because I had so much time to myself, and I thought that I had been giving myself tons of time, right? I discovered in the lockdown that I have anxiety, and it was this thing that I'd always sort of had, but I'd always sort of denied about myself, I never identified with someone who had a potential problem, right? And it's a little bit self-diagnosed. Let me say, I don't have, I've actually spoken to someone about it, and they said that, yes, you have a condition, and it's a condition that's sort of very prevalent in almost everyone today, because it is just the nature of the world today. It's the nature of our environment is creating that in us, right? But I think I can go back to being a teenager and remembering it. And I just realized, I'm like, oh, that's what it was. So for me to find out or to discover that I have anxiety was not actually debilitating. It was actually very liberating, because for me, I was just like, oh, then it wasn't me. It was my anxiety. The biggest issue I used to have was the self-loathing I used to go through. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Why am I thinking about this? Why am I, I'm living in the future. I'm worrying about everything, pros ke cons, all of those things. I'm like, it wasn't me. It was my anxiety. And it was so important for me because it really just made me love myself a little bit more. I just became so much kinder to myself, because before I could actually label it as this thing. And this might work differently for some people. Like, I know people who, for example, have said that, oh, this is my anxiety, and then they identify as an anxious person, and they start actually exhibiting symptoms of that, which is not actually real and true for them. But for me, it worked the other way. When I said it, and I said it out loud, and I said it out, proud, it just changed the game for me.
But how did you diagnose it for yourself? What were the symptoms like?
Well, for me, when I get anxious, I don't think I have physical symptoms of anxiety, like I might get clammy hands or something, I might experience a shortness of breath or things like that. But for me, what happens is that my mind goes into overdrive. I can't sleep, I start actually hypothesizing about situations, and I start emotionally reacting to all those situations. So when you have, say, what is anxiety? Anxiety is, I think simply put, you could say it's a state of living in the future, right? Because...
Or in the past?
Is it?
Dwelling on the past?
I don't know if the past ever
because
gave
a lot
me
of
anxiety.
lot of what you think about the future and worry about the future is coming from your experiences from the past.
I suppose it's got the baggage of the past, right? But what it actually is a foot in the future. And what do both these things mean? It means you're not here. You are everywhere but here. And if you just look at here, right now, this moment is always perfect. It's always fine.
This is a very powerful concept in the book, if you've read it, The Power of Now.
I have actually read it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there he talks about now is always perfect, now is always beautiful, and now is something that you can always handle.
Yes.
It is something which is ahead of now, which is the future, which is your own predictions, your own projections, and all of those things, and whatever baggage you are carrying that
and
is
your
making
imagination, you know. So even if that thing, your worst fear, even if it came true, at this point, it's not a reality. Right? At this point, it's entirely in your imagination. So,
and you just double your suffering by suffering it once now when it is not happening, and God forbid if it happens.
Also, as you would have read in The Power of Now, suffering is a choice. Right? So I think that for me, there was this extreme liberation that came with that, from recognizing that I wasn't myself. When you asked me what actually happens to you, is that it's like a flow chart. It's a flow chart that I have no control of. It just starts going, going, going. I start imagining this, that, every possible permutation, combination, outcome, everything. And the problem is that when I start emotionally reacting to all of those, I am so exhausted. And till now,
How do you
nothing has
snap out of
happened.
it?
Nothing has happened till now. So how do I snap out of it? I think my spiritual practice over the last 15 or 20 years has really helped. It sounds like a lot of time, but it has been one of the most special things for me. It's the thing that I love about myself the most, is that, if the world was sort of divided into believers and skeptics, I'm a believer. You don't need to convince me. Despite all the opinions and the irony and the sarcasm and all of that, I am actually an eternal optimist. I do actually sort of navigate the world with that naivety. I have faith in people. I have kindness for myself, and I hone in on that. So practically speaking, this is what meditation taught me, And whenever I sort of recommend meditation to people, they say, no, but I can't, because my mind just doesn't shut up. Nobody's mind shuts up. It's the nature of the mind. It's the job of the mind to create thoughts and churn out thoughts. You don't, hone in on your other organs. You don't ask your heart why it's beating. You don't ask your stomach why it's churning. But you really are hard on yourself about your mind. Why is it thinking? Well, that's what it was meant to do. The question to ask yourself is, why are you reacting?
Correct. That's the right
poor
question
goddamn
to
mind
ask.
is just doing the thing that it was designed to do, And I think that what meditation did and what it kind of taught me was, yes, of course, being in the moment, right? But also, it's not about making the mind, having the mind stop thinking. It's not about stopping thoughts. You can't stop your thoughts. It's not possible. And it shouldn't be happening, because then you'd be an idiot, right? It's about not investing in those thoughts emotionally. It's about actually watching the thoughts. And this concept of watching, being the watcher.
Observer
right?
of your
being
own
the
thoughts.
observer. That's what happened for me. I realized that I can watch my anxiety, I can separate myself from it. And that was really important for me, because
And
I
making
didn't know it
friends
wasn't
with the
me.
anxiety is another concept that has really helped me to cope up with mine and to cope
Like
up
a
with these.
frenemy of sorts.
Friends with anxiety, what I really mean is that being an observer, you can only observe when you are not emotionally invested in that, A. And second, when you know that it's a situation that you don't have to detest yourself of, or it's not something, some stain on your cloth that you have to, get rid of.
It's not you.
It's not you.
That's the most important thing. It's just
Simple.
not you. It's that unwanted guest, or a friend in your case. I don't think I'm there yet.
So for me, so making friends with my anxiety was like acknowledging that yes, it is there, and it is going to be there, because that's the very fabric of the environment that we are in now. It is sort of things are sort of tweaked in a way that you are going to be making hard choices. You're going to be revisiting certain thoughts that you will have certain regrets from, something you'll be wondering about the future. There are aspirations that will come true, that will not. You'll be building stories in your head about that, about people. So many things that we do on day basis. We are not just hunter and gatherers anymore, that we care about just what to feed and just live another week or day or whatever.
I actually have something really interesting to say, and it's so crazy that you touched upon the words hunter and gatherer, because I've done some research on this, and it turns out that we can date back anxiety to the fact that we were hunters and gatherers. So do you want to know more about that?
Yeah, please.
So way back when we were hunters and gatherers, we had a very simple life, right? Human beings had a very simple life. You went out, you hunted, you gathered, you came back. But there were actual threats, right? So people were just sort of concerned with survival. What did that mean? Getting food to eat, having some kind of shelter from the weather, the fear
Very
of
primitive.
the fear of wild animals, the fear of death. So the fear of death was a very real thing, right? If you didn't get food, you would die. If you were out in a bad weather condition, you would die. If you came across a wild animal, you would die, right? So human beings were actually wired to abstain from death, to sort of secure themselves from death. So anxiety was a mechanism that came up because, we need fear. Fear is important. If we didn't have fear, we would go stand in front of a moving car. We might go do lots of things, right? So fear is a mechanism that's actually created in us as a warning signal, which was needed at that hunter-gatherer time because there were real threats, right? But we are cursed with our evolutionary genes, right? So what happened is that the world changed, right? There were no actual threats anymore. There are no wild animals, walking around the streets, we can actually come under a roof when the weather is bad, and food is not scarce anymore, right? So what happens is that we still have this mechanism of fear and of reacting against fear, of self-preservation, but we don't have those
Survival instincts.
We have the survival instinct, but we don't need it. Right?
All the time, at least.
We don't need it in daily life. So what happens is that instinct kind of props up. Why? Because I'm getting late to work. Because this idiot didn't text me back. So all these things actually make those survival instincts kind of, trigger and wake up, and anxiety releases, but the threats aren't there, but we're wired for that. So anxiety actually comes back to hunters and gatherers.
Correct. The survival instinct from where you just want to protect yourself from the bad.
Yeah. So what we need to remind ourselves is that there isn't a threat until there is.
Until there is.
But there isn't actually a threat. And we don't need to react as a threat. So, and we hate ourselves for all these feelings, and we hate, what's happening to me. And I've gone through such intense self-loathing when it comes to anxiety. But when you understand that it's actually just a physiological response that we're wired for, the world changed faster than we did. So,
and it is okay to be anxious also at times when, and it's human brain, right?
Oh my God, it sucks. I think it's awful.
Of course it does.
When I get into an anxiety spiral, I can't think of anything it is my least favorite state to be in.
But it's human to be that. There's a reason why almost every other person has it. Because it's sort of innate in you. It comes from that survival instinct. It comes from that fear of someone, again, sabotaging you, or you being protecting yourself, nurturing yourself, and all of that. Self-preservation, right?
I think that when I will truly, truly be proud of myself as a human being is when I learn how to live with uncertainty. I don't think I'm there yet, but that's my, I don't want to use the word goal because it's so serious, but that's what it is. I want to be okay with not knowing, because in some ways I'm always trying to know. When you make a plan, what time are you going to be here? All of those things. They're all little ways where we try to control situations. In some people it shows up in the way they eat, or in the way that they are in their relationships, or just in what time they wake up, etc., etc. But I really want to get there. I really want to get to a place where I'm okay with not knowing what happens.
I think for all of us, in some way or the other, the quest sort of remains the same. You have spelled it in such brilliant words. But to think of it, really, that is what...
I read a lot.
Shows up. truly does show.
I'm probably paraphrasing.
Just also, speaking about reading, I do get guests very few guests who read a lot. So tell me about some of your favorite books and how books or how a good book can change a person's perspective towards their life.
So I think that the book is like the physical object we're talking about, but what it is, the actual sort of the abstract idea of listening, receiving, and observing, all of those things. It's your openness to see the world differently every day, right? I was always an avid reader because I loved words, I loved stories. And till today, my ideal go-to book will always be fiction because I just love stories so much. But I may not always read cover to cover, a non-fiction book or a self-help book, but I find those ideas elsewhere. I read a lot online. I follow a lot of people that I really respect and admire. But I think more than the book itself, it's about your openness to receive another idea, I've sort of just worked really hard on collapsing that idea of an ego in myself, because an ego is just essentially just a self-image. And every day, it's like what you said about, is it A or not A? Every day that you tell yourself that you are this, and every time you label yourself or somebody else, what you've done is essentially deny everything else that you could be. You've denied every possibility. Answers don't really get us anywhere. Questions do. I'm really more interested in a great question than a solid answer.
So true and so interesting at the same time. You know, like we are talking about A and not A. Eisha, let's say she has lived her life so far and she's a very opinionated girl. But tomorrow you might wake up and you might have no opinion about, let's say, something. You know, there's a possibility for that.
That will never happen. How dare you?
Might happen. There's a possibility for that or something else.
I do hope that,
Or
at the
not a
end of this
serious opinion.
conversation, we don't take that word opinion so seriously anymore. It's just a thought.
It's just a
It's
thought.
just a thought that you have some sort of like faith in. It's only an opinion to other people.
True.
I mean, do you really think of your opinions as opinions?
Not really.
No, they're just who you are.
They're just who you are.
Yeah.
But I've also come to a realization that even they are not who you are. You think, in your head, you think you are because you have lived a life with a conditioning that has then got you into situations where you were needed or you behaved that particular way. It got you to some place where you are now okay about. But you can be another way also, and you being okay with being another person. Let's say, like I said, that I don't like to drink, but tomorrow is a possibility that I could have a drink and just enjoy it as much or more.
Oh, you will.
Yeah. So
we're going to go get drunk and we're going to see what happens. And then let's see what comes out of your mouth after that.
Are we going drinking about this? After this?
Always.
Yeah, so it's a very simple example.
I'm hungover right now, by the way.
Okay. So it's a good time to have a conversation. Are you a good hangover?
I'm rolling with it,
person?
Yeah,
you are for sure.
Unfortunately, it's gonna, as you get older, they just last you longer.
They make you more happier also?
As long as my face is not swollen, I'm fine.
Nothing. It's not showing up at all until you mentioned. I couldn't figure out at all.
That's all you see.
Eisha, just tell me your top 3 self-care routines that you follow to.
My top 3 self-care routines. So my self-care routines are have nothing to do with a skincare product.
Glad you said that.
My top self-care routine has to be a practice called the morning pages. It's something, I'm a highly indisciplined person, but the only thing in my life that I have stuck to ever since I started doing it was this practice. So the morning pages is basically, it was something that was sort of created for writers. It worked so well that they sort of put it out there for all creative people. And then they realized that every human being is in fact a creative person because you are creating your life. It's just now recommended for everyone across the board. And what you do is that you keep a journal by your bedside, a journal and a pen by your bedside. And the first thing you do when you wake up, you have your coffee or whatever, is that you write 3 pages. Not more, not less, handwritten. You just fill up 3 pages and you just vomit. You just put out anything you want over there. You don't try to be intelligent. You don't try to be rational. You don't try to write well. In fact, the worse you write, the better it is, right? But it's sort of like, it's like taking a dump, but for your mind, right? So before things have happened, you just vomit out all these words and you don't judge yourself. You just put it out there. It could be a to-do list. It could be your thoughts. It could be your dreams. It could be anything. But you do that and then you stop. At 3 pages, you stop because less than 3 pages, you haven't actually expressed yourself, and more than 3 pages, you're overindulging, which is a thing, right? And you do that, and then you put it away, and you don't look at it again. You only open the book the next day where you write a whole new 3 pages. And this, in fact, actually really helped me with my anxiety, right? Because anxiety means that you've decided that your thoughts are real. You've decided that they're true and that they're important. You put them on a pedestal. But every single morning, I was waking up and engaging in a practice that eventually wired me to think that my thoughts are garbage. My thoughts don't matter. My thoughts are vomit. I don't even go back and look at this thing. I don't know what I'm writing. I don't think about what I'm writing. And I don't go back and look at it again. So it was a very important thing for me to start seeing my thoughts as something that don't matter because I've always considered my thoughts really, really important. So the most important thing that it did for me was to tell me that my thoughts aren't important. And I've got to tell you this. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm still sort of in the sort of discovery phase of it, but I can safely tell you that every day that I do it and the day I don't do it are very different. And the days I do it are just so much better. I don't know why, but they're just so much better.
The only thing with these practices, any of these self-care practices, as you may call it, or any other reflective practices, is that you have to do them with a continuity. It's not an
Yeah.
instant pill that you'll write it for 2 days and you're like, oh, I'm feeling so much better. My thoughts are all,
No, you gotta give it time to do its thing, and of course, like if you never go to the gym, that one day you go to the gym, it will be good for your body, but you'll never really know what this thing can do for you because there is just so much value to time
And physical body is so much
practice.
easier to tackle and work on than your mind. Your mind
For
is
me,
a-
no. For me, no.
No, it's not like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, for me, no.
But are you doing something about it? You have a reason to say no when you're doing enough for
I
it
just
and
don't
still not
enjoy it,
happening.
man. I just don't enjoy exercising. If I ever get to a place in my life that I enjoy exercising and I do it for any reason other than the vanity of it, then I really would have achieved something because I just like to sit, I really enjoy sort of sitting around and brewing in my thoughts. I've always been that person. Just, I just
Right. So
know that I kind of have to, so I do it.
yeah, because you don't
Yeah.
do it, probably that's why you are not able to see the results or whatever it is that you're aspiring with your
I don't think that
exercising.
switch
right?
has happened for me,
Yeah.
I don't think that switch has happened for me, and I've become too comfortable being comfortable.
Right.
So I got to do
So
that.
it is a much simpler practice when you are only talking about the physical body. The changes in the physical body is much more simpler. I'm not discounting the fact that the discipline is yet needed to be there and
Yeah,
all of that.
yeah.
But to work on your mind is a way more
Yeah, and
complex
something
practice.
comes easier to some people than others.
Right, right. So one is that morning pages.
One is that. The second self-care practice for me is I love binge watching TV shows. It's like my favorite thing in the world to do. And while there's all these memes and conversations about how it's a waste of time and it's just like a false dopamine hit, it's not for me. It's the only time in my life that I switch off from my own dialogue. And so for me, that's actually a self-care practice. So if I feel like watching something, the other day I watched season 2 of Indian Matchmaking in a day.
I don't
Indian
know how
Matchmaking, okay? I watched that for a day.
Is that a long series?
You don't know Indian Matchmaking?
I have absolutely no idea.
What? You don't know Seema from Mumbai? What
I
are
know
you talking
Seema from
about?
Mumbai. Like I've seen some bits and pieces and some memes that they, make a shorter reel of it and then post it.
60-70% only you can get,
Yeah.
no? I guess.
Right? So I know what the characters are, what that primary character is like, but I don't know the other
Oh God,
plot.
it's so much fun.
Yeah,
It's
is
so
it?
much fun. I think it's a really well-made show, actually.
Yeah.
They've done a good job at, I think, making you root for the characters somewhere,
Oh, wow.
if they can be called characters. But yeah, that's...
I will check it out for sure.
So for me, just to...
That is your recommendation out of the whole library?
No, I'm binge watching. I never said that. I think for me, it's about doing that thing that gives you joy and not judging yourself for it. It's okay. If it makes you happy, just do it.
Yeah,
You're not hurting other people. You're only hurting yourself a little bit. It's okay.
It's okay, you could do that.
You can do that. That would be my second self-care practice. And the third self-care practice for me has got to be saying no.
I'm so glad that you said that because a lot of us don't realize that saying no is so important to your mental well-being and emotional health.
Yeah.
You could save yourself from so many unnecessary situations,
Yeah.
dialogues, people,
And people
and
don't
stuff.
mind that much. They can
We
deal with
think
it.
that saying no will, land you into a space where you'll not get certain opportunities and all of that. But I think I have somewhere become a believer where I feel that whatever is meant
It's the
for
power
you,
of no, not the power of
the
now.
power of no.
It's the power of no.
Exactly. So I have this thing called power of no, and I constantly write about it on my social media. Art of saying no is what I call it.
Yeah.
And there's a way.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be nasty to people about it. You shouldn't be too self-proclaimed in your head or something like that. It shouldn't be coming from a bad place. But as long as it is coming from a place of self-preservation only, it's coming from a place of you taking care of your own sanity. Why not?
My sister told me this, so again, my sister's a therapist, so she obviously is very, very astute about these things. And she told me, she said, our family, our extended family has always judged you for the fact that, sometimes you didn't want to come down and say hello to everyone, or sometimes you did not want to do certain things and, you were a little obstinate as a child about these things. But today, if you look at it, you just had very, very deep values of self-care. And I thought, again, like I was just being a difficult kid or, I just, all of those things. But I realized now that I was doing something right, by saying no to the things that don't work for me. It's a little easier to do with your family because that's your safe space, but I started doing that with friends. And what I found was that one healthy decision goes a really long way in all the healthy decisions in your life. You know, it gives you courage. You know, it just gives you courage to say
Something
no. It
as
takes a
simple
lot.
as
It
that.
takes a lot to say no.
Right.
It's not easy.
Right.
You know.
And something as simple as
Makes
the
you
example
unpopular.
that, of course,
Yeah.
it does.
But you like
know,
yourself a lot better.
But we are so conditioned to say yes and to label certain things as rude behavior or as being a difficult person, like you're not coming down to meet your relatives. And I somewhere feel guilty also of these.
I mean, that was
conditionings.
rude behavior, but you know, it was the instinct. I think. I think you should come down and say hi to your relatives. You know, poor things.
Yeah, but right. So, but we are also guilty of the conditioning that that we perceive someone as difficult even before getting into a conversation with them, and even before getting to know that why they're saying no if they don't want to come here. And that is what happens in a lot of relationships. Also, you expect your partner to like the things that you do, or to do the things that you do, or to go to the places that you want to go. And if they say no, you don't really know how to respect that. You label them as difficult. Now, reflecting back upon my relationship, there's so many places where I think I would have wronged the other person just because I didn't know any better.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So something as simple as that, where the small things, small shifts, where the issues start cropping up and they start building bigger. Those are the foundations, right? That's where you start giving them a label that, oh, you know what, he's difficult, he's rude, he's moody, he's that. And then you find instances in your life to fit
I'm
into
all those things. I don't know. I mean, what do you feel like is important in a partner? I mean, how do you pick a partner if you pick one?
I would say...
I think we all just have very sort of simplistic ways of doing this, right? Like, you're physically attracted to someone, so you kind of want to go and spend more time with them. Then you find yourself emotionally attracted to them. You're kind of intellectually stimulated by them. But then actually, we just kind of go with the flow with it, right?
True, but for me personally, I would say that now I've come to a realization, not that I have an experience of a lot of relationship, but I've come to a place where I think it's not about the other person anymore, it's about me. And in a way that I have to know myself enough to know that what are the flaws that I can't put up with. Let's say Eisha has 100 good things about her. 100 good things anybody can put up with. But what are those 2 flaws that I recognize as flaws? They might not be flaws for real,
What are
but
your
that is
deal
my
breakers?
definition of a flaw in a person. But can I put up with those? And how can I deal and put up with those? So if I can do that, then Eisha is the best person for me. I can see a future together, or whatever it is that we try to build together. So for me, I now think of it in that manner. Not the pluses, not what is working, because what is working will work any which way, right? So what is not working, and what is my reflection there? Can I work there? Or is it just absolutely non-negotiable for me?
Right.
You know, so for me,
What's
that
not
is...
A?
For me, that's the criteria.
That's
No.
that's a really interesting perspective. I've never thought of it that way.
Probably that's how I have become over the last few years after doing some sort of my
That's been your journey
introspection.
within.
My journey within, yeah. All of us have all these different routes that we take to make this journey within, but in the end, the quest remains the same, no?
All roads lead to Rome.
Right?
Yeah.
So we all want to be a kinder person, a better person. We all want to find love. We all want to give love, even if we don't acknowledge it, even if we ourselves feel that, oh, I can't be so much in love, or I'm not this person. But inherently, somewhere, when you find the right balance or the right relationship or the right partner, you discover that you are that person, you know? So we all are trying to be, or we all are essentially in the same quest, and we are approaching it from our different roads. Our journey within are different.
I had a very funny, like humorous experience a few weeks ago, where one of my aunts was asking me, she's like, but then what are you looking for? And you know, like, it's such an aunt question. Like, tell me your top 3 things. What are the 3 things you're looking for?
I'll
in
find
a
you the
person?
boy.
You know? Yeah. And it's actually, I think it's like a subtle attempt to kind of make you like realize that you're actually too picky. But they asked me what my 3 things, my 3 main things were, and what are your, you know. And I said, so the first thing I said was kindness, you know, kindness, compassion, empathy. You know, that's my top value, right? Is that, can you be that, right? Can you be that to yourself and to the people around you? Can you be empathetic to what's happening to another human being and to yourself, and have that compassion? So those are all just sort of one umbrella term for me. The second thing I said is humor. It's really important for me to laugh. It's really important for me to be kind of like tickled, in all sorts of ways, I
Right.
suppose. So humor as like I'm a full like hasi to phasi, absolutely. Like
You
it's
don't
like,
give out those vibes at all.
oh
At
my
least
God,
in this last one.
yeah. People
Yeah?
take advantage, they
Yeah.
know, the funny guys, they know how to get there.
Oh, wow.
Right? And the third thing I said is it's really important for me, at least in a man, for me to, that it must be someone who's a feminist, and not a feminist in the terms of, it really in the sense of equal rights. And if you do that, then you can see all people as equal, not just male, female, etc., etc. And she just looked at me and she said, "You realize you're just describing yourself, right?" And I was like, "Oh shit."
Yeah.
So I'm
Is
like,
that a problem?
yeah, but it was so interesting because it made me think that, well, if I already have everything I want, then what the hell am I looking for? Right? That if the three qualities that I consider the most important, I already have those things, then why do I need
Go
someone
with the flaw
else?
theory, Isha.
Yeah, maybe, and I thought of that. I'm like, why am I looking for that in another person? Which then made me think that if I'm going to do that, if I'm going to find a partner, and if I'm going to make a conscious choice, I need to be with someone who makes me better. Because I got this. Like you said, what works is already working. It's already working for me, right? And like you said, that find the fault that it can't, that you can't deal with. But I think beyond
you
that,
have a scope to be better.
yeah, because what is the point? Unless someone is actually making you a better version of yourself, what is the point of being with them? I don't get it. Because I already covered the whole feeling lonely thing. I don't feel lonely anymore. I can provide for myself. I'm doing great. I'm doing fine. I'm happy. So what is the need for a partner in my life unless they're going to help me evolve in some way? Probably, if and when I meet that right person, eventually I'm just going to make a bunch of stupid decisions. But I think that I would like to think that I would make a more conscious choice that is about someone who helps me be better. I want to be with someone who is better than me. And I hope that they look at me and they can say that I'm better than them. Because if that doesn't happen, I just don't see the point.
I wish you the best with
Thanks, man.
that.
Looking out for flaws now.
Yeah, and that's a longer journey because the things that you like, they come through in first few dates or first few interactions, but things that you don't
'Cause
like,
otherwise
so
you
that
wouldn't
you have
go
to
on the
spend a little
second
bit
date.
more time and
Yeah.
figure out that, okay, yes, this is sort of the flaw,
Like
and those
the
are the
gym.
red flags.
Like the
like the gym. So all of these things in life, they take time and they take some sort of a, you making some conscious effort in that space, because in first meeting you don't necessarily know what a person is, and we're also so attuned to judge, even if however self-work we do, however much self-work we do. And I've been in that space that I have, judged people on the first meeting, and we do by the appearance, by the way they talk, their thoughts, etc. And by the time I've met them for the fifth time, I'm like, no, this is not that person at all, what I built in my head. So that could be true for
Right,
our
they're just
potential
putting
partners.
what they think, they're putting out what they think you want to see.
Correct. Correct.
But yeah, I think I think I do all those things and all of the above and much more. But I think the right way to kind of go by these things is, do you want to hang out with them again? Are you kind of compelled to see them again? I think that's a good enough
Reason.
first few dates kind of barometer to have. And after that, we can start with all this heavy thinking.
What are the romantic gestures that sort of excite you?
Oh,
He should bring a book with his feminism.
I got my own books. I think, like, what's my love language? Definitely physical touch, affection.
Are you a hugger yourself?
Oh my God, I have a hugging problem.
Oh, same here.
It's been a big thing for me to realize that everyone's not like that, and also everyone can like misconstrue that as well.
Right.
But for me, I really enjoy that. There's nothing
Those awkwardly long
I'm
hugs.
such a massive cuddler, and in fact, my cousin told me a little while ago. She said, I saw this girl at a wedding from like across the field, and she's like, she had your hug. And I was like, I have a hug. She's like, yeah, you have this hug. You always go on the top. She's like, you always hug a certain way, and you always hold it. And I was like, oh yeah, I have a hug. You know, that's great. I love the fact that I have a hug.
You have a hug.
I have a hug. I have a signature hug. And then more and more people started telling me that.
What a
And
beautiful thing to leave this
it
world
is,
with,
you know
no?
what? It is a beautiful thing, and I'm
Yeah.
not going to apologize for it.
Of course,
you know?
why? Why?
Yeah. I think definitely, physical touch and quality time are my sort of love languages. I'm using those terms also, but I think it's great when someone can make you laugh and all of those things. But that's more about their ability. You know, they were born with that. That's not about you. I think I really enjoy spending time with the person. You know, I really I really enjoy that sort of people who express themselves physically in some way, or just express themselves, right? Like,
Right.
my need may be to have that, but I think effectively what you're really talking about is someone who says what they feel or shows what they feel. You know, that they can, if they love you, they care enough that you see it,
Right.
you know, that you know it.
We've had a bunch of interesting conversation on this podcast so far. We've talked about so many human emotions
Right.
and the possibilities that exist in this world for us to experience.
Yeah.
On a parting note, Eisha, I would like to take 3 tips from you for our viewers or our listeners to take back to make their journey within.
Have fun and don't take yourself so seriously. Meditate. Hydrate.
Hydrate. Very important.
Yeah.
So those are 3 very simple, doable things that one can start from and then see how it evolves for them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Eisha, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for
bearing
having
your
me. I've
fun
had so
self.
much fun.
I've seen you performing on stage, and that is where I've known you from. And you've always, put up these beautiful, larger-than-life stories, which start from a very simple premise, and that is where I think a lot of us relate to you and start living into your stories.
That's
and
my
they
thing.
go on to
Yeah, that's my thing.
Yeah.
Thank you for identifying that.
and they go on to giving out these really bold, strong messages, and you make sure that you're heard, and it's a story that sticks with people for a long time.
Thank you.
So thank you for creating
That's so
those
lovely.
stories, and I really wish you the best with your further future assignments, and also finding the boy, if at all you are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And all the same to you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, this is Eisha Chopra and you've just watched or listened to me on the Journey Within with Shobha Rana. Here we talk about everything that matters, and if it doesn't matter, then we will make sure it does. And if you enjoyed this conversation today, please like, share and subscribe to the channel and click on the link below and let me know what worked for you. Drop us a comment and let us know what was interesting and what you'd like for her to talk about next.